I was floating on cloud nine when my granddaughter Lily came into the world. I'd spent hours daydreaming about her tiny hands tugging at my roses, me teaching her the difference between a hybrid tea and a floribunda, just like I did with my son Daniel, back when he was a sprout. I could already see us in my garden, me in my floppy hat, her giggling as we planted marigolds. I'd been living in Daniel's house, well, technically our house, since I chipped in half the down payment with my late husband Robert, for 3 years since Robert passed. I'd turned my grief into love, cooking pot roasts, keeping the place spick and span, and dreaming of being the world's best grandma. But the morning after Lily's birth, my world turned upside down faster than a pancake on a hot griddle. I was in my room, still in my faded pink pajamas with little daisies, clutching a framed photo of Robert and me from our 30th anniversary. His kind eyes smiled back, grounding me. Then Clara, my daughter-in-law, waltzed in like she owned the whole darn universe. She's all yoga and designer handbags, with a smirk that could curdle milk. "Margaret, I've got a little something for you," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, like she was offering me a slice of pie instead of a knife to the heart. She handed me an envelope thick and fancy like it was an invitation to a gala. My hand shook as I opened it, expecting maybe a sweet note about Lily. Instead, I got an order to vacate. The words hit like a ton of bricks. I had 45 days to pack up my life and skedaddle because the true successor, Lily, my own granddaughter, was here and my contributions weren't needed anymore. Contributions? As if my 40 years of motherhood, my endless casseroles, and scrubbing their floors were just a side gig. I felt like someone had yanked the rug out from under me, and then stomped on it for good measure. "What's this, Clara?" I stammered, my voice barely a whisper, still clutching Robert's photo like it could anchor me. "Read it, Margaret. It's time you stood on your own 2 feet, she said, eyeing me like I was a stain on her pristine yoga mat. "I don't understand," I said, my throat tightening. "I've been here for Daniel, for you, keeping this house a home." She cut me off, sharp as a garden shear. "We have Lily now. We need the space. You've had a free ride for 3 years, and frankly, it's time you managed without us." Free ride? Oh, that burned worse than a sunburn in July. I'd poured my heart into that house. Ironing Daniel's shirts, making Clara's favorite lemon bars, even planting a rosebush by the porch to brighten their days. I'd given up my librarian job to be there full-time, thinking I was part of the family. My chest ached like it was caving in, a hollow pain that made my knees wobble. But the real kicker, the one that felt like a betrayal bigger than Texas? Daniel, my sweet boy who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, knew about this eviction and didn't say a peep. Not a word. I'd raised him, sold my mom's sapphire ring to buy his medical school textbooks, and now I was being tossed out like last week's leftovers. I looked at Clara, her smug grin practically glowing, and thought, "Oh honey, you've got no idea who you're messing with." Clara didn't just stop at that eviction notice. Oh no, she made it her mission to remind me I was about as welcome as a weed in her perfectly manicured life. One evening I was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of my famous chicken noodle soup, hoping to lift everyone's spirits after Lily's birth. Clara stormed in righteousness and snapped, "Margaret, you're always hovering around, making me feel like I don't belong in my own home." I tried to keep my cool, my hands shaking as I set down the wooden spoon. "Clara, this is the house where I raised Daniel, where Robert and I built our life together." She didn't even blink. "Robert's gone, Margaret. Daniel's my husband now. This is our home, our family. You're just extra." "Extra? Every syllable was a jab, making me feel like a dusty old book nobody wanted to check out. I'd sit in my garden afterward, tending my roses to unwind, feeling alive as I coaxed blooms from stubborn soil. But Clara? She took one look at Robert's old gardening tools, his rusty trowel, his worn clippers, and tossed them in the trash without a word. I found them in the dumpster, covered in coffee grounds, and my heart just broke. I tried talking to Daniel, hoping my boy, who used to draw me pictures of sunflowers, would see how Clara was erasing me. "Daniel, honey," I said one day, "Clara threw out your dad's tools. They meant something to me." He just shrugged, barely looking up from his phone. "Clara's particular about her space, Mom. You know how she is." Particular? That was like calling a hurricane a light breeze. She wasn't just rearranging. She was wiping out every trace of my life in that house. She'd replace my cozy curtains with sleek blinds, toss my handmade quilt for some trendy throw, and even moved my rosebush to a corner where it barely got sun. And Daniel just let her do it. Each day, Clara found new ways to make me feel like an unwanted guest. "Margaret, could you not leave your gardening gloves on the counter?" she'd say, or "We don't need your soup tonight, I ordered takeout." I'd smile and retreat to my room where I'd stare at a photo of Robert and me, his arm around my shoulder at a county fair, both of us grinning like fools. I'd given everything to make Daniel's life better, thinking I was building a family that'd always have my back. But Clara's words, her cold stares, and Daniel's silence made me feel like I was fading away, like a rose nobody bothered to water. I'd lie awake, my heart heavy, wondering how my own son could let this happen. Clara wasn't just pushing me out. She was trying to erase who I was. And let me tell you, that hurt worse than a thorn in the thumb. Clara thought she had me pegged as a frail old lady, good for nothing but cooking and fading into the background. But a surprise even greater than finding a rare flower in an abandoned flower bed awaited her. When my Robert passed 3 years ago, he left me a secret stash. $3 million from life insurance, some clever investments he'd made as an accountant, and the sale of a little rental property we'd fixed up together. I tucked it away in a safety deposit box planning to save it for my granddaughter Lily's future. Maybe college, a first car, or a wedding with all the trimmings. I lived simply, tending a tiny patio garden with potted roses and petunias, wearing my old cardigans and keeping my librarian's budget tight. So nobody, not even Daniel, suspected I was sitting on a fortune. Clara sure didn't. But there I was, sitting on the edge of my bed in the room I'd called home, clutching that eviction notice like it was a bad report card. The paper was crisp, official, with Clara's order to vacate screaming that my contributions weren't needed now that Lily, the true successor, was here. My hands trembled, not just from hurt but from a fire starting to burn in my chest. Clara thought I was weak, a pushover who'd shuffle off quietly. She was as wrong. I looked at my rose clippings on the nightstand, their delicate petals a reminder of how beauty can thrive in tough soil, and muttered, "She thinks I'm nothing, but I'm not done yet." Then came Clara's next jab. Cardboard packing boxes delivered to my door, same-day service, like she couldn't wait to see me gone. I found them stacked outside my room, each one labeled Margaret stuff in her perfect handwriting, a not-so-subtle hint to hurry up and vanish. It was a twist of the knife, but it flipped a switch in me. I'd been preparing for this moment without even knowing it. I remembered the late nights Robert and I spent planning our finances, his hand squeezing mine as he said, "Maggie, this is for our family's future." I'd kept that money hidden, not out of greed, but because I wanted Lily to have opportunities, maybe a chance to study botany like her old grandma dreamed of once. But sitting there with Clara's boxes mocking me, I realized that money wasn't just for Lily anymore. It was for reclaiming my life, my dignity, my place in this family. I stood up, straightened my daisy print pajamas, and looked at the photo of Robert and me, taken at a county fair where we'd danced under string lights, my hair still red, his smile wide as the horizon. I'd tended my roses to keep my spirit alive, but Clara's betrayal woke up a strength I'd forgotten. It wasn't just about the money, it was about proving I wasn't extra, as she'd called me. I was Margaret, who'd built a home, raised a son, and loved fiercely. The hurt stung, but it lit a spark of defiance that felt like sunshine after a storm. I wasn't going anywhere without a fight. Not the fist kind, mind you, but the kind where a grandma's heart and a secret fortune say, "Hold my pruning shears." Moving day was rougher then. I landed in a rundown apartment, the kind of place where the walls thrummed with neighbors shouting matches over who forgot to buy milk. The linoleum floor was peeling, the sink dripped like it was crying for me, and my tiny patio barely fit my potted petunias. I'd packed my life into a dozen boxes, my gardening books, Robert's old photo albums, my daisy print apron, and hauled them to this sad little spot. Daniel, my son, showed up for all of 20 minutes, carrying 2 measly boxes before glancing at his watch. "This is probably best, Mom," he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. "You need your freedom." Freedom? At 68, after a lifetime of pouring my heart into my family, that word felt like a bad joke. I wanted to grab his shoulders and say, "Freedom's what I gave you, kid, with every late-night tutoring gig." Instead, I just nodded, my throat too tight to argue. He promised I'd see Lily on special occasions, Like she was a holiday fruitcake, not my granddaughter. That hit my soul. I tried calling Daniel every week, hoping to hear about Lily's first giggles or those tiny smiles that make your heart bloom. "How's my little sprout doing?" I'd ask, picturing her in the onesie I'd knitted, yellow as a sunflower. But Daniel was distant, his answers short, like he was reading a script. "She's fine, Mom. Busy around here." I'd sit in my creaky chair, staring at my roses struggling in the shade, feeling like I was fading too. Then during one call, I heard Clara's voice in the background, sharp as a thorn. "Daniel, tell the delivery guy to put the Q-size purses in the closet." Gucci purses? Plural? On Daniel's pediatrician salary? I nearly dropped my phone. My boy was out there fixing kids' earaches, not raking in millions. My librarian brain started spinning. Something didn't add up. A few days later, I drove by their house, my old house, on my way to the grocery store, just to catch a glimpse of the rosebush I'd planted. There, gleaming in the driveway, was a sleek Mercedes, not Daniel's beat-up Toyota we'd nicknamed Old Rusty. My jaw hit the floorboards. I parked across the street, feeling like a nosy old biddy, and watched Clara strut out in a designer outfit I'd seen in a magazine at the library. She loaded Lily into a car seat fancier than my entire wardrobe and drove off to boutiques I'd never dared step foot in, even when Robert was alive with his accountant's paycheck. My gut was hollering. Clara was spending money like it grew on trees, and Daniel was acting like nothing was wrong. I felt like I'd stumbled into a mystery novel. Except I was the sad sleuth, piecing together clues in my own life. Sitting in my apartment, watering my petunias, I couldn't shake the image of those Gucci bags or that Mercedes. I wasn't just hurt anymore, I was suspicious. Clara thought she'd pushed me out to stay invisible, but I wasn't ready to wilt. I was Margaret, who'd raised a son. I wasn't going to let this mystery pass me by like a weed I hadn't pulled. Clara's flashy Mercedes and Gucci purses had my suspicions blooming like dandelions in spring, so I decided to dig deeper. I wasn't about to let her secrets stay buried. I found Laura Peterson, a private investigator whose love for photography matched my passion for gardening. I felt at ease the moment I sat down, my hands clutching my worn purse like it was a lifeline. I spilled everything. Daniel's pediatrician salary that couldn't buy a Mercedes, Clara's designer outfits that screamed money, and how she'd kicked me out of the house I'd helped buy, cutting me off from my granddaughter, Lily. "She's spending cash we don't have," I told Laura, my hands trembling like leaves in a storm. "And she's made it so I can't even see Lily's little smiles." Laura leaned forward, her eyes sharp as, "What's driving you, Margaret? Is this about revenge or protecting your son, Daniel?" I swallowed hard, tears stinging like I'd gotten dirt in my eyes. "Both, if I'm honest. I need to know what Clara's hiding. She's acting like she owns the world, and I'm just the old lady she tossed out." Laura nodded, jotting notes on a yellow pad. "This could take weeks. The truth might hurt, you know." "I'm already hurting," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just find me the truth, Laura. I can handle it." I handed over a check for $2,000 from my savings. Not the big stash, just enough to look like a retired librarian's budget. Walking out, I felt a mix of fear and hope, like planting a seed and praying it'd sprout. I spent the next week tending my patio petunias, trying to keep busy, but my mind was on Clara. I'd see her in my head, strutting in those boutiques, while I was stuck in a rundown apartment with creaky floors and neighbors who argued over who ate the last yogurt. I'd call Daniel asking, "How's Lily's first giggle?" But his clipped replies, "She's fine, Mom," made me feel like a pest. My heart ached for my granddaughter, for the family I'd thought we were. I'd sit by my roses, clipping deadheads, wondering how Clara afforded her fancy life. Then a week later, Laura called, her voice tight. "Margaret, I've got something." Clara was at a charity gala at the Grand Hotel, dripping in diamonds, on the arm of a man who wasn't Daniel. My heart sank like a stone in a pond. I pictured Clara, all glitz and glamour, laughing with some stranger while Daniel worked late fixing kids' sniffles. Who was he? I asked, gripping the phone. "I don't have a name yet," Laura said. "But I'm digging. You sure you want me to keep going?" I took a deep breath, staring at a photo of Robert and me, dancing at a fair, his grin my anchor. "Keep digging," I told her. "I need to know everything." That gala twist hit me hard. I sat on my lumpy couch, my petunias wilting in the shade, feeling like I'd stumbled into a soap opera. Clara wasn't just spending big. She was living a life I didn't understand, and Daniel was clueless. I wasn't ready for whatever Laura would find next, but I wasn't backing down either. I'd find out what Clara was up to, even if it broke my heart all over again. 3 weeks after hiring Laura Peterson, my private investigator, she called me to her office. I shuffled in, my hands clutching my purse, my potted petunias at home still on my mind. Laura's desk was cluttered with photos and coffee mugs, but her eyes were serious as she slid a folder toward me. She didn't sugarcoat it. Clara was carrying on with James Thornton, a real estate developer worth $10 million, who loved golf as much as Clara loved her yoga classes. They'd been meeting for 8 months at a fancy hotel I'd only seen in glossy ads. Worse, Clara was plotting to divorce my son, Daniel, claiming he was neglectful to snag a huge settlement, using my sweet granddaughter Lily as a bargaining chip. The kicker? Clara thought Daniel was hiding wealth. Oh, the irony, since I was the one with a $3 million stash she didn't know about, tucked away for Lily's future. I sat there, staring at a photo Laura handed me. Clara laughing with James, her head tilted back, happier than I'd ever seen her with Daniel. She was draped in a sparkly dress, diamonds glinting at her throat, while Daniel was probably at the clinic, soothing a kid with a fever. My heart felt like it had been trampled by. "She's got divorce papers drawn up," Laura said, her voice steady. "She's telling folks Daniel's neglectful, building a case to take Lily and everything he's got." My Lily, my little sprout I'd dreamed of gardening with, was just a pawn in Clara's scheme. I felt sick, not just for me but for Daniel, who was working himself ragged while Clara played him for a fool. The betrayal was a thorn in my side, sharp and deep, making my chest ache like I'd lost Robert all over again. Then Laura dropped another bombshell. She'd found texts Clara sent to James, mocking me as a pathetic old gardener who clung to her roses like they were her only friends. Oh, that stung worse than a bee in the blooms. I'd spent years tending my garden, finding joy in every petal, but Clara turned it into a punchline. I pictured her typing those words, smirking in her yoga gear, while I was in my rundown apartment, watering petunias to keep my spirit alive. It hurt, but it lit a fire in me hotter than a summer sun. I leaned forward, my voice firm despite the tears in my eyes. "Let her think she's winning, Laura," I said. "I'll make her show her true colors." I left Laura's office with my head spinning. I couldn't stop thinking about that photo, Clara's laughter, James' smug smile, and it made my blood boil. I thought about Daniel, who now knew nothing about his wife's double life. I thought about Lily, who deserved her grandmother's love, not a mother who used her for her own ends. When I got home, I sat down by the flowers on the patio, trimming the wilted rose petals, and felt the spirit of resistance awakening within me. Clara thought she could bury me. I'm not done yet, and I'll make sure Clara's plans wither before they have a chance to bloom. Clara's betrayal had my heart aching, but it also planted a seed of cunning in my gardener's soul. I hatched a plan, fueled by hurt but sharp as my pruning shears. I called Daniel, my voice trembling with fake desperation. "Honey, I'm struggling with rent in this rundown apartment," I said, picturing my wilting petunias. "Can you help your old mom out just this once?" He sighed, sounding worn thin. "Things are tight with Lily, Mom, but I'll ask Clara." Bingo! I knew he'd run to her, and Clara would see a chance to twist the knife. Sure enough, Clara called the next day, her voice dripping with fake pity. "Margaret, I heard you're in a bind. I might have a nanny job for the Wilsons, but it's $12 an hour, and they need a $300 deposit to prove you're not a thief." I could hear her smirking through the phone, like she was savoring my downfall. She set up a meeting at a ritzy spot where her yoga crowd sipped overpriced lattes. I spent the morning preparing, digging out my oldest dress, a faded floral number I'd worn to weed the garden, and skipping makeup to look the part of a desperate grandma. I tucked a tiny recorder in my purse, hidden under a pack of tissues, and practiced my pitiful face in the mirror. Clara wasn't the only one who could play a role. I walked in, clutching my purse as if it contained my last penny. Clara was sitting at a corner table with her friends Susan and Emma, both decked out in jewelry and casting judgmental glances. They looked at me like I was a stray cat begging for food. Clara waved at me, then called out so loudly that everyone in the cafe heard. "Margaret, sit down. The Wilsons need a nanny, but they're very picky." You'll need a $300 deposit." Her smile was full of venom, as if she had caught a valuable fish. "I don't have $300, I mumbled, letting my voice crack, my hands fidgeting with my purse strap. Clara leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. "I'll loan it to you, but you'll owe $390 with interest. Sign this." She slid a promissory note across the table, and oh, it was nastier than a weed-choked garden. 30% interest, late fees, even a clause to seize my belongings if I didn't pay. I scanned it, my heart pounding, but I signed with a shaky hand, the recorder catching every word. Susan snickered. "Some people never learn to fend for themselves," and Emma nodded, sipping her chai like she was at a show. Clara's laugh was cold as frost, and as I gathered my things to leave, her voice carried across the cafe. "It's sad how helpless she is, isn't it?" I shuffled out, head down, but once I hit my car, I wasn't crying. I was grinning like a fox. That recorder had captured Clara's cruelty, Susan's snide jab, and the clink of their coffee cups as they mocked me. I drove home and played the tape back. Every word was gold, clear as a bell, proof of who Clara really was. I sat by my roses, clipping a deadhead, feeling like I just planted the perfect trap. Clara thought she'd buried me, but this old gardener had a few tricks left in her trowel. One Sunday the phone rang and I heard Daniel's voice, broken like a broken branch. "Clara is divorcing me, Mom. She says I don't pay enough attention to her, and wants to take Lily away." My heart sank, but I had been expecting this. I drove to his house, my old house where I had planted roses and raised my boy, and found him wandering around the living room, looking 10 years older. I sat him down on the faded sofa Robert and I had chosen years ago and told him everything. About Clara's affair with James Thornton, about the recording with the plan to rob him. I turned on the tape and Clara's voice said mockingly, "What a pity she's so helpless," and her friends laughed. Daniel's face contorted, his eyes filling with tears. "How long have you known, Mom?" he asked in a barely audible voice. "A few weeks," I replied, my voice tight. "You wouldn't have believed me without proof, dear." I took out the bank statement showing the $3 million Robert had left Lily. Insurance, investments, proceeds from the sale of real estate. I hid it to see what kind of man you would become, to secure her future. Daniel trembled. "I let you live in that rundown apartment where you were treated like a thing. I'm sorry, Mom." I took his hand, feeling the calluses from long hours at the clinic. "I know, dear." We hugged, and for the first time in many years, I felt like he was my boy again, not Clara's puppet. We fought back, acting smarter than a pair of experienced gardeners. In court, our lawyer presented evidence, photos of Clara with James, texts in which she mocked me, my note about her predatory loan at the cafe. Clara turned pale as a winter rose when she heard her own laughter. Faced with the prospect of losing everything, she agreed to joint custody of Lily, with no large settlement and no house. Then came a twist sweeter than honey vanilla. James, her wealthy golfer, dumped her as soon as his wife got wind of their affair. Clara was left with only her Mercedes and Gucci bags, no mansion and no rich man to finance her yoga. I spent some of my savings on a cozy little house with a sunny patio for my roses, a guest room for Daniel, and a nursery for Lily, painted yellow like her favorite sunflower jumpsuit. One afternoon, I stood in the kitchen sipping chamomile tea and watching Daniel push Lily on a small swing in the garden. Her laughter filled the air, and my heart was as full as a flower after a long winter. Clara considered my quiet love a weakness, mistaking my kindness for surrender. She learned that the hard way. My patience was a strength, like roots holding fast in a storm. I had regained my family, my dignity, and a future as bright as my petunias in full bloom. I thought of Clara, who was probably sulking in some luxurious apartment, wondering where her plans had gone wrong. I didn't gloat, well, maybe a little deep down, but I was too busy tending to my roses and preparing Lily's first gardening lesson. One day, Daniel brought me a bouquet with a card that read, "Thank you for not giving up on us." I smiled and placed the card next to Robert's photo, knowing that I had fought for what was important. My garden, my family, my heart, it was all mine again.
Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to dig into someone's secrets, like I did hiring Laura to snoop on Clara? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.